Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Benchmarks Symposium, a video series about Vodori's 2023 State of Promotional Review Benchmarks Report. I'm Annalise, Senior Manager of Marketing and Communications at Vodori, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Vodori's co-founder and CEO, Scott Rovegno. Scott, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Annalise, for having me. Delighted to speak to some of the topics we have on hand here for today.
Absolutely. And if you could please introduce yourself a little bit and just tell the folks at home, a little bit more about you and potentially about Vodori.
As you had mentioned, I am one of the three founders of the business. And as CEO, I spend a lot of time thinking about the overall company strategy, interacting with our customers to understand where they are trying to get to, and understandably, therefore, trying to figure out how we can help them get there. One of the advantages of my role is I'm slightly detached from a lot of the day-to-day chaos that often occurs as our customers try to commercialize their products. And so it allows me to see across and hopefully connect some of the dots that are unfolding regulatory-wise, sales and marketing-wise, by industry segment, by region of the world. And again, try to make sure that Vodori as a business is anticipating where things are headed and well-suited to help our customers do the best that they can do as part of their drug, device, vaccine, diagnostic test commercialization activities.
Awesome. Thank you. And, I was preparing for this. The CEO is coming on the symposium. Like, what do I ask? And I think one of the things I want to do today is do a bit of dot connecting with you. So, the other videos in this series are doing more deep dives on specific data sets within the report or best practices that are relevant. And I think you're a great person to come on and go a little bit higher level and think a little bit about benchmarks from various perspectives. So I want to start by just giving like a little bit of a remember when. So came to you 3 years ago and said, hey, let's do this benchmarks report thing. And you were very supportive, as were, many others in the organization. And as I reflect on that, I think one of the reasons is that we at Vodori are super data driven as an organization, and we also are obsessed with benchmarks. And so I'm curious, just why is that? Was that something that was part of Vodori's value from the onset? Is that something that developed over time? Like, why are we as a team so data obsessed?
Great question. A couple things come to mind. As you know, one of our even core values as a business is continuous improvement. And I think without having measurability in the activity or in the process, it is exceedingly difficult to benchmark and see where we are, where the organization is, whether that's us as a company, of course, or in this case, our customers. And so, at about 3 years ago, you were wise in realizing that we had critical mass in a data set that was big enough and anonymous enough to tell a real story about what was going on inside the marketplace. And, perhaps drawing on a little Peter Drucker, but, what gets measured gets managed. Let me ask you this. Do you have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch? Have you ever tracked your steps?
I do.
Have you ever compared?
I am obsessed with it, actually. It's almost too much information, but often drives my day because
Yes.
if I haven't gotten the right number of steps, that kind of impacts my post-work activities.
Well, I can tell you that in our business reviews with customers, when they learn where they land ahead of and better than benchmark, or perhaps maybe a little behind benchmark, it similarly motivates them to take action, which is great. And I think, look, at the end of the day, the reason the benchmarks are important is because fundamentally it is all about continuous improvement. It's about helping our customers little by little, right? It could be 1% per period, improving the process. That improvement means that maybe we're squeezing cost out of their process and helping them be more efficient. Maybe we're eliminating calendar time from the material approval process and allowing them to be more responsive in the marketplace. I'm a big believer in competition. May the best product at the best price with the best service win in the marketplace. And if we can't, as an organization, as a medical device or diagnostic manufacturer or a biotech pharmaceutical business, if we can't brag efficiently and with speed to the marketplace about our latest clinical innovations, we're going to lose that bet. And that's, at the end of the day, a detriment to patients and ultimately to their care. So again, if we can help our customers make steady, continuous improvement, again, a core value, against their material approval process, that's a huge, huge benefit to everyone. I think that whether you are a reviewer on the MLR team, or perhaps on the commercial side and submitting content into the process, whether you are responsible for the system as a whole, or whether you're sitting on top of all of commercial and watching the performance of the entire function, content included, we all relate, as your story signals, that if we can make the process a little better, no matter what the outcomes are. We talked about the benefits of being better, but it just makes us feel like the work is worth it, and the small adjustments Vodori or the customer may make to the system configuration or to the preparation of the work itself before it goes into the system, that those small improvements pay huge dividends on the back end, and then of course show up in this analysis of the benchmark. So yeah, I think frankly, it's a major value proposition we use when educating customers on the value of a system and the value of Vodori. That long-standing partnership we take with customers. It's not about go live of the new system and the new process. It's about the quarters and years worth of continued, steady. Maybe it is just 1% per month improvement, but gosh, that's 12% per year of improvement. If I could do that for the rest of my life, I don't care what I'm working on, that's significant growth. And as I said, at the end of the day, that's what we're here for.
Well, and especially 1% improvement for a group of people. Like that's
yes,
just
right. In aggregate.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the things that I was reacting to as you were talking, is that the data is for everyone in the process. It's not just for the system owner. Surely they'll be the one potentially driving decisions based off of the data, but democratizing access to that data, actually, if all the people involved in the material review process can get 1% improvement, I mean, you're just compounding benefit over a course of a year, of a quarter, of a week even. And so the more you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the corollary that you're touching on that's important here is, again, back to those business reviews. When we share the customer's performance against the benchmark on a regular basis, could be 2, 3, or even 4 times a year, the inspection of their current state against that benchmark is obviously essential, because it's not just, hey, you are better than or not quite as good as the benchmark. It is also, what do we need to do about that? And how do we hold ourselves accountable to making those steady improvements, continuous improvements, again, in the system configuration? Perhaps we need to hire or outsource one of the functions for a period of time because there's a burst in content. Maybe we need to retrain our users, something that you, of course, are aware of, that is included in our subscription price, a major differentiator. But we do that for a reason, because we know that if we've got new users and they're not used to the way the organization routes material for approval, or don't know the standard operating procedures, that's a major detriment to that organization's ability to move content through the process. So yes, the comparison and the analysis is part of it. That is, though, the catalyst for unpacking what's going on. And I think here too, major compliments to our customer success team and their ability to bring all of their knowledge, having done this so many times for others, and to say, hey, yeah, what upon further reflection, as we looked at your mean or your average or your median of your metrics, we went a level down and we discovered that the discrepancy to the benchmark sits within this step, or sits within this group, or sits within this agency even for the content. And so, yes, it is a multi-layered analysis that starts with comparison and sets up this continuous improvement process. And perhaps tying it back to where we started, if you had a couple of days where your steps weren't quite where you wanted them to be, you reflect back and you go, well, the weather was kind of foul and I didn't want to walk the dog that day. It motivates you to start taking some action. And that's exactly the same thing we're trying to do here.
Yep. I've had the delight of talking to some of our customer success team in this video series, and the level of nuance they're able to get to just by understanding an organization's process of, like, you could get this % better just looking at the types of annotations that are being submitted.
Yep.
I mean, it's just remarkable, actually, how an understanding of the process and just the data about the process can help just drive immense improvements that are even just that 1% improvement. We're just going to do it a little bit differently and, reap huge rewards. So yeah, that's been awesome.
Perhaps I'll take that yet again one step further. So much of the continuous improvement recommendations, right? We did the analysis. We looked at the data for the last quarter. Your median and mean numbers are thus. We're now going to compare those to benchmark. We're going to start to unpack and inspect. So often, and I think this is where you're going, so often the recommendations ladder up to best practices. It's not a software issue. It's a human issue, right? At the end of the day, what goes in comes out, and a lot of that's driven by the human piece of it. And there are, to your point, so many different best practices that when viewed through dozens upon dozens of customers, which our customer success managers are sitting on top of, their
Yeah.
ability to cut through that and go, hey, a couple of adjustments here in how you think about doing X and Y, massive dividends. And so you're absolutely right. It's not just a software problem, as we all know, and that best practices is never better on display than the aftermath of the comparison to benchmark.
Absolutely. It's a process of humans. So
Correct.
there's always going to be a layer of best practices and collaboration. So absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about morale. So one of the reasons that our customers are able to get to benchmark, I mean, there's multiple reasons, right? But we've often made the connection, and we actually did this in the 2022 benchmarks report, is say happier users are more successful in the review process, and that begets faster review times. And I think often this idea of like how someone feels about the process or the user morale is maybe not always top of mind. What's the connection there? How should organizations think about happiness with the process and sort of the end value that comes from happy teams?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The truth of the matter is that we live in the compliance space. It's not the kind of environment where everybody shows up at work ridiculously excited to fastidiously analyze the language used in a particular piece of sales or marketing collateral. However, what if, right? What if, or better stated, imagine if the software was ridiculously easy to use and the friction were removed as a byproduct of the ease of use. What if all of those best practices we talked about a moment ago are also being employed, and therefore work is flowing through the system very efficiently? You feel good about that. It's like, again, meeting your steps obligation, or perhaps any other thing that's important to you that you're measuring, you start to feel good about it. The other thing I think we see from customers who go through this business transformation is they go from an environment where they know they're not totally 100% confirmed, fully compliant. We should be following the SOPs. It's very different than I can guarantee we are following the SOPs on a global scale in every country we do business in. No, there are no rogue salespeople doing their own thing in their own PowerPoint environment in order to create the deck. They're only using the approved collateral from the approved locations where those approved materials reside. And so you add up this equation of beautiful, easy to use software. Everybody's following the process. Everybody feels good about the fact that we're being compliant. And then you add in the benchmarks element that starts to demonstrate we're actually making steady progress against industry standards for my sized organization in my industry subsegment. And you go, hey, look at that. We're like better than all the other groups that we are being compared against, or our peer group. That also makes us feel good. And I think at the end of the day, we all do better when we feel good about the work. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a sport. I don't care if it's a profession. I don't care if it's a hobby. When you find joy in getting better at it and you've removed the friction from the process, that starts to pay dividends. And at the end of the day, I would say that your analysis up front, it's circular, right? We do better when we are better. We are better when we do better. And the ability to compare current state against my peer group is an amazingly valuable tool. It's not the only one, but it is a part of a broader continuous improvement program that allows the organization to make steady progress, to feel good about that progress, to feel good about being airtight compliant, and to feel good about equipping their commercial organization with ethical, timely, best-in-class content to drive penetration of their latest clinical innovation. I mean, at the end of the day, we would all feel good if that were the case, right? So yes, morale is a big deal. And it's one of the most surprising for me, having spent over 25 years in the industry and in content management and compliance. One of the most surprising things is the correlation between a great process, morale, and then the great output of that process. And then, of course, the circular nature of all of the above. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And one that we're continuously studying and looking for different ways to create the environment for teams and organizations to do well by being better at this overall process.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, awesome to get your perspective on that. Okay, want to see if you'd be willing to entertain a more personal question. So, I'm just curious more about your why. I think it relates back to, all the things that talked about, like the Vodori values and, why we exist as an organization, but why do you do what you do? Why does Vodori do what we do? I'm just curious to get your perspective on this.
Good question. It's several things. I think I would start with the customers we serve and the work that they do. Like, no disrespect, but we're not helping companies sell more sneakers. This is not providing, the latest and greatest television set for your living room. This is healthcare, and it is a major, major, major challenge globally for society to better serve all of humanity and the myriad conditions we all face: longer lifespans, cost complexities, the clinical innovation side from a scientific perspective, just explosive and ridiculously exciting over the last 15, 20 years. And the result of all of this need from a patient perspective, population and demographic factors, and the clinical innovation, there's just been this explosion of amazingness in life sciences for an industry that at the end of the day is ultimately serving humanity. And I think at the end of the day, if that innovation, no matter again where it resides, vaccines or pharmaceuticals, medical devices and diagnostics, of course, if that new, better test, drug can't find its way to the physician who will prescribe it or order it, or in the US to the patient who is trying to figure out and match their symptoms to potentially what's going on, what an amazing tragedy, right? So at the end of the day, what motivates me is I think every scientist and R&D laboratory who is developing these amazing products benefits from software like ours, so that the world knows that those clinical innovations have been approved, have been clinically validated, and perhaps are now the new standard of care, or maybe are now available for a new indication that they weren't previously. And so there's this constant need to educate all stakeholders with the value of these products. And if we can play a small part in making that process efficient, cost effective, healthcare is not getting any less expensive year over year, and democratize access so that all organizations, from the smallest biotech startup to the largest global household names, have access to open, interoperable, best-in-class software to get the message out and to make sure people are aware of their latest clinical innovations. That's a huge, huge deal. And again, no disrespect to those out there making TVs and sneakers. I own them both and lots of them. I like them. But there's a difference when health is on the line. And that's what motivates me. That's what gets me excited. And that's why it's been so fun to work not just in producing great software, but now transforming organizations to really get excited about this notion of just continuously 2, 3, 4% of the time improving their process and making it more cost effective for their commercial teams to get out there and to get everybody excited about what's now available.
Mm-hmm. What a perfect bookend to the conversation. I'll end it there. Really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your perspective on these topics. And like I said, just zooming out a little bit and helping to connect some of the dots to why even we embark on this report each year and make it available to the industry. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure. Awesome to be with you here today, and look forward to the next one.
Awesome. And everyone watching, please go download the Vodori's 2023 State of Promotional Review Benchmarks Report. You can download at vodori.com/2023 benchmarks. Thanks so much and have a great day.